Hello and welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farrukh Pitafi. Today we are going to talk about regional peace. The Army Chief of Pakistan and DGISI visited Kabul, and there they met with various stakeholders. The President, also the head of the Afghan peace process, and various other personalities, and the U.S. journal was also present there. We are going to talk about all these matters and more in order to help us understand what exactly are the matters which are important right now. Remember that we have kept on flagging the issue or the bottlenecks that are there. For example, one aspect is Taliban have of late refused to acknowledge the delay in the U.S. withdrawal. But the U.S. forces withdrawal is going to happen. We have already seen various places being vacated. So what becomes of Afghanistan then? These are important issues and we are going to discuss it, and we have a great panel. I'm going to introduce them in a bit. But before that, let me also condemn one very sad incident that took place in the suburbs of Kabul. A girl child's school was attacked and children were killed in that. This is unacceptable behavior, although Taliban have refused to take responsibility, and we know that given that the kids who were attacked or the school that was attacked belong to the Hazara Shia community. So there is always a chance that ISK might have actually done it, because most of these people come from Lashkar-e-Jhangvi organizations which are proscribed, but they are essentially violent sectarian organizations. There is one aspect: there should be zero tolerance for such incidents. And regarding the importance of Taliban coming back to the negotiation table, it is important, otherwise there will be a vacuum of power and that can create a lot of problems. Remember that Taliban have actually declared 3-day ceasefire during Eid. So we are going to talk about all these matters, the significance of the Army Chief's visit, and then all the developments that are taking place. We are going to talk about all these matters. In order to help us understand these issues, we are joined in the studio by Syed Muhammad Ali, who is Director Strategic Affairs of CAS. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. On Skype, we are joined by Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi, former Defense Minister and also former NSA. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. Ambassador Asif Dotani, a career diplomat, also a data analyst of renown, joins us via Skype as well. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program as well. Let me start at home. Let me start in the studio. Sir Muhammad Ali Saab, tell us, what is the significance of this visit?
I think it's a very timely visit because the current stage of the Afghan peace process is very critical and delicate, because this time is precious, and with the US forces departure, we have seen an escalation in violence between Afghan Taliban and Kabul administration. But like you rightly pointed out, there have been some incidents in Kabul which are being attributed to spoilers, which are trying to gain space and further deepen the wedge and distrust between the different stakeholders. So in the same vein, you would have noticed that in the last few weeks, the miscreants using the Afghan territory have also attempted to attack Pakistan-Afghan border. The fencing process is being attempted to be disrupted. Our levies and FC Jawans have martyred. So this is a matter of grave concern for us, and that's why after the recent visit of the British Chief of Defence Staff, it is interesting to note that both Pakistani and British military leadership took the initiative to go and see the current political leadership of Kabul administration in person,
Okay.
and urge him that in the greater national interest of the Afghan nation, he must show accommodation and flexibility
Right.
in order to reduce the violence and allow the peace process to succeed.
Right, flexibility is essential, but the question is whether the Taliban are going to actually come to the table or not. Let me go to General named Lodi Saab. General Saab, your take on the importance of this visit.
Thank you very much. I think what Americans failed to communicate to Ashraf Ghani to give up his transigent attitude, the same message was again given to him through our own army chief and through British CDS. You know, once we say that who is actually becoming more stubborn, look at the ground situation. Who controls most of the physical space in Afghanistan? Who has actually forced these American and their allies to vacate Afghanistan? And then who should be having more say as far as the future dispensation is concerned, although everybody should be accommodated? So what Ashraf Ghani is saying, I think we should be very clear before we make a judgment that who is actually not coming to the terms. Ashraf Ghani is saying that his government should continue. The present constitution of Afghanistan should be accepted by all, and there should be elections under this constitution, and then we can think of the future dispensation. Afghan Taliban are saying that no, this constitution which was made under the tutelage of Americans and the elections which took place under their influence are not acceptable. So we should have an interim government, and they should decide about the amendments in the constitution, and then further future dispensation. And now you tell me, Pitafi, that in your opinion, which is the more sane approach out of the two? Because every time you say that Afghan Taliban are not coming and they are not talking, actually it is Ashraf Ghani who is not giving up his intransigence attitude. So he should try to read the ground situation. And
General sir, with due respect, I hold no a brief for Ashraf Ghani. My concern is that one side is openly stating it, right? Afghan Taliban are actually stating that they don't want to resume dialogue, and that seems to be the problematic part.
No, they only say.
I'm sure that if I don't hold any brief for Afghan government, you don't hold any for the Afghan Taliban either. So,
but I would like to add one sentence. I would just like to add one sentence, and then you can go to the next. The moment American troops are out of Afghanistan, my dear, the scene will change altogether. This is the only time available with Ashraf Ghani to do some thinking and soul searching and come to the terms on the realities. Thank you.
Right. Let me go to Ambassador Saab. Ambassador Saab, your take on the visit, and then you can also talk about the possible modalities of any way forward, sir.
Thank you, Farrukh. I think I cannot be as categorical as General Saab is about Taliban and Ashraf Ghani. But my 2 cents would be that the situation is definitely very sensitive. And Taliban, definitely they are playing in transition. Their attitude is non-compromising. They think that the power was snatched from them by the Americans, so it should be returned to them. But it's now a matter of 2 decades. And more importantly, Taliban, they have announced 3 days ceasefire, which means there will be peace in the country. Now, whatever action or whatever carnage takes place, like Darshe Barachi school in Kabul, in which 6 girls were massacred in a cowardice act. Now, whether Taliban are involved or not involved, since they don't subscribe to ceasefire, so the blame would go to them. So, diplomatically, if I were Taliban, I would think 10 times that what am I talking about with this intransigent attitude by not subscribing to ceasefire. One thing. Secondly, Ashraf Ghani, we all know, he lost the war. Diplomatically, he lost it. because he was not involved in the February 29th agreement with the Americans. Americans directly negotiated with the Taliban. Of course, they acknowledged you can say, as being the largest stakeholder. Now they consider Taliban as the largest stakeholder. So things are there. But the question is, we in Pakistan, we must be very cautious when we are talking about the future events which are going to unfold, because anything which is attributable to even our scholars would be construed as the officially inspired, briefing. So here, my caution would be that let the Afghans do their bidding.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not us to suggest them to what you have to do, what you don't have to do.
Right.
That's why my advice would be we have to be extra cautious. Yes, we can analyze the things, but at the same time we cannot suggest things to them. Let them do it, because this is what has been, coming back to us, and it is haunting us throughout during the past 4 decades. And that's why we have been suffering. It is not the Afghanistan. We have suffered equally during the past 4 decades. Forget about the events of 9/11, where we have lost 70,000 of our citizens, including our law enforcement agencies.
Right.
So we have to be very careful.
Ambassador Saab, that is a very good point actually. We should not be in a position where somebody can easily frame us for their failures. And that's a great point, Mohammad Ali Saab. The problem is that the way the international narrative is created, do you think that Pakistan can somehow magically become less conspicuous and attract the less attention?
I think it's a very important point because Pakistan, and I agree with what Jan Saab and Ambassador Saab has said.
They didn't agree.
No,
Okay.
I agree with the central point that Pakistan has suffered the most. But let me add one more point. Pakistan has also attempted to contribute the most,
Right.
political capital and diplomatic efforts,
Right.
in trying to bring all the Afghan stakeholders on board,
Right.
and to facilitate the peace process. No other country seems as committed to this.
And how long have we been trying to do that now? 40 years?
Absolutely.
Look where it got us.
That's,
So should we be doing that?
But alternative is not an option, because we have suffered the consequences of Afghan war more than any other neighbor. However, I agree with Ambassador Saab's point that we cannot give conditions because for 2 reasons. Our influence over any particular Afghan stakeholder should not be overestimated. It is also important because they are autonomous. They do not, for example, there was a lot of pressure on Afghan Taliban to go to Istanbul, but they didn't go to Istanbul.
Right.
So our influence over any particular stakeholder should not be overestimated. That's exactly why we are in no position to make any commitment or give guarantees on behalf of anyone.
Right.
However, our overarching role in steering the process, keeping it afloat, is important. But it is also important that 2 main points that Pakistan have been stressing recently after this process resumed is that the withdrawal and the drawdown should be responsible,
Okay.
and according to a very well planned strategy that does not immediately create a vacuum that is filled with violence.
Hang on. But this argument should have been given when a deadline didn't come forward, right? There was one deadline which has passed. Now there's a new one, September 11. It is one thing to actually meet with the British CDS and actually co-participate in a meeting with the Afghan government, but at this moment it is set in stone. The US is going to withdraw no matter what. So if we say that it has to be responsible, is it going to really be responsible any longer?
There are 2 aspects to it. Let me take you a few months back before the President Biden's announcement of military withdrawal. Very interestingly, the Turkish and the German Ministry of Defense informed their respective legislatures in December last year about the possibility of extended military stay by their respective forces. And they both were aware of the Doha agreement and the May 1 deadline. But still their military was informing their respective legislation there is a possibility of extension. And before this President Biden's announcement, a few months back, number of concerns were expressed even in the German parliament that early withdrawal or a hasty withdrawal would not be wise. And lot of US allies who are part of ISAF do not share the American approach.
Hang on.
Yes.
Is there a possibility that the US withdraws, but ISAF actually stays? Why would they?
That's an excellent point.
America started this war and it is withdrawing.
This question has been raised by our diplomats with our friends who are part of ISAF. And very interestingly, they have not made any commitment. They are saying everything is on the table. This is what they want to bring to the table if Afghan Taliban decide to come to Istanbul after Eid. That is exactly what they want to, because there are two things which the Western Alliance is trying to leverage with Afghan Taliban. There are two things. The review of the UN Security Council lists regarding the sanctioned entities. So if that is the carrot that they might reconsider and encourage the Afghan Taliban into global mainstreaming in return for reduction of violence and also the release of the prisoners.
The point is that there still remains the age of economic nationalism. You have seen how countries are behaving around vaccines, right? I don't see any country actually committing for a long-term deployment if the country that started the war withdraws, and that is going to happen. Let me go to General Saab. General Saab, is there a possibility that this drawdown or withdrawal is delayed or is replaced by something else? We have been hearing the reports that maybe India actually wants to place its forces and that's why it wants to build peace with Pakistan. Do you think that there is an alternative plan for whatever goes on in Afghanistan?
Thank you. I think the beauty of your program is that you allow all of us to express our views. And I, being a non-diplomatic man, at times I do use the language or the approach which probably is a little abrasive, so forgive me for that. The first thing is, militarily it is not possible what you are saying. But if Afghan Taliban are made to understand this thing which we are all talking, that they need to get mainstreamed and attach themselves with the world, then maybe there's a remote possibility of this being happening, what we are discussing. But once we talk of responsible withdrawal or irresponsible withdrawal, my dear brother, just tell me, if a force, outside force, comes and occupies the country for whatever reason, and then while going they are talking about responsible going or irresponsible going, I don't understand this theory at all. Actually, the only responsible act which Americans have shown is that they are going. This is a good responsibility that they have taken. Staying back and delaying the thing and saying that it should be a responsible withdrawal is just a gimmick. I don't think that any occupation force can say that we want to go responsibly. I can't really discuss as far as this thing is concerned. What I'm saying is that irrespective of what the economic situation says, irrespective of what the political situation says, that my two friends are giving their statements on that. Militarily, it is not possible for allied troops to stay back unless with the approval of Afghan Taliban. But that would be a very good thing to happen if that at all happens, because one thing which we have been listening all along, that Afghans are fiercely independent people. They can accept anything, but no remnants of foreign forces on their land. That, in my opinion, is a no-go and has a zero probability of happening.
Right. Ambassador Saab, same question to you. And please also comment on the media speculation about post-withdrawal Indian role in Afghanistan.
Well, I think Americans are withdrawing.
Yeah.
And even when they had a surge during Obama's time in 2009 till 2014, they had to withdraw those bulk of the troops. If the bulk of the troops couldn't make a difference, what 2,500 or 3,500 American and the remaining 7,000 NATO troops are going to do. So this is for sure they are withdrawing. Secondly, when we talk about responsible withdrawal is that it should not be an embarrassing situation both for the Taliban as well as for the withdrawing troops. Because immediately analogies are drawn about the Vietcong American withdrawal from the American embassy at Vietcong. So here, Saigon. So it is important that these things should be kept in view, and the sensitivities are very much there. As regards Indian involvement, I think India would not, they are not so naive and they are not going to take this, because if the Americans couldn't do it, how the Indians are going to do that? And especially when they have no geographical access to the country. So they will perish. And one thing we should not forget when we talk about Afghanistan or the foreign troops, and Taliban may be calling them as intruders or interveners, but American troops and NATO troops, or before that ISAF troops, they went there under the UN sanctions under Chapter 7 of the UN Security Council Resolution 1373. So therefore, whether we like it or not, under the international law, American troops or American-led ISAF troops or American-led NATO troops were legally very much there in that country. You cannot. In Iraq, it was the war of choice. But here, it was the war of necessity. So we should not forget that. That's why when you talk about the Taliban Committee 1267, which is now 1988 listing, there are 146, 147 Taliban who are to be taken to account. But again, that is a political statement, because you have to bring charges, you have to press charges against them. And then again, there is the politics when the one which American wants, those Taliban, they can travel, they can stay in Doha, so this is diplomacy, this is politics, which goes beyond, behind the scenes. So these things are going on. But the question is, you have to be mindful of the fact that being the neighbor, having suffered the most, and having given the most access to the Afghans, whether they are Taliban or they are the Ashraf Ghani government people. Ashraf Ghani government people, they abuse Pakistan during the day, and in the evening they spend their time in Hayatabad, Peshawar. Their families are living there. So there is a symbiotic relationship with us. So we have to be mindful of these facts as well. So whatever future brings in Afghanistan, actually, it would directly impact us as the leadership, whether it's Prime Minister or the Foreign Minister or the Army Chief. They have been describing it, and they have been describing it very elaborately, eloquently, that peace in Afghanistan is an imperative for peace in Pakistan. So we have to be mindful of. So this is what we are trying to do. But there are factors which are beyond our control. For instance, Afghanistan is a narco state. It happened under the United States watch, under the NATO's watch, and they could not get rid of those narcotics. If Taliban are getting money from narcotics, it is a fact of the life. But same is true for the Ashraf Ghani government. Who of Ashraf Ghani's government is benefiting from the narco money? So Afghanistan is a narco state. Afghanistan is in chaos. And at no point of time, whether we talk about the withdrawal of the American troops, whether their presence is a factor of stability, I don't think so. When they will leave, there will be more chaos. Yes. So these are the factors. We are now pressed between the rock and the hard place.
Right.
So
and that is,
yes. So
Ambassador Sahab, with due respect, that seems to be the permanent resting place for Pakistan. We usually are suspended there. But coming back to the studio, Muhammad Ali Sahab, let us also talk about the possible spoilers. Can you identify them individually? One is ISK, right? Who else is a spoiler in Afghanistan?
I think linked what Ambassador Sahab just said, this environment after the departure of the Western troops is becoming more vulnerable for increasing influence and capability of the spoilers.
Okay.
Because despite the growing influence of Afghan Taliban,
Right.
it is also very important to see that the weakening of Kabul administration, the departure of the Western forces, and the ensuing chaos that it creates also creates the environment ripe for the spoilers to benefit from this
Right.
environment. And the attack that only happened recently in Kabul could be unfortunately a sign of the things to come.
Okay.
And when we come to the specific spoilers, whether it is Daesh ISIS, whether it is TTP, whether it is BLA, whether it is BLF,
Okay.
my pessimistic view is that there has not been any central government or authority in Afghanistan, irrespective of its dispensation,
Okay.
which has enjoyed the popularity, support of all the constituencies, and controls the security and territorial integrity to ensure
Yeah.
that the spoilers do not use its territory
Hang on.
against the neighbors.
Hang on. You mentioned ISK, IS Khorasan. I can understand that. TTP somehow is in its orbit. It can be understood. You mentioned BLA and BLF. They might be attacking Pakistan from within Afghanistan, but in Afghanistan they hardly do anything against the Afghan peace. So can they be called spoilers against Afghan peace process?
Absolutely, for two reasons.
Okay.
Because the role of NDS, the role of RAW,
Thank you very much. Now you are taking names of possible spoilers.
sponsors of the spoilers.
No, they are spoilers,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, because they are using their proxies against the territorial integrity, political stability, and economic security of Pakistan.
Okay.
And I think in this case, I fear that there could be a surge, and we are already seeing a surge in terms of attacks or attempted
Right.
attacks on Pakistani-Afghan border.
Yeah.
Number of our levies and FC Jawans have embraced martyrdom. And we need to be very careful, very vigilant, very alert to ensure. Also the attack that took place on the Serena Hotel in Quetta. We should be very careful, perhaps guarding and securing CPEC.
Yeah,
And
my concern at this moment, right now, I come to Pakistan, how to safeguard Pakistan's interest later. I wanted to actually talk about the spoilers who might be actually spoiling the peace process in Afghanistan. General Saab, what are the key spoilers? I understand that
Thank you very much.
NDS's name was taken, but it is basically Afghan intelligence agency. Is it not in their interest to actually let this peace process go ahead? Because in the end, it is their homeland which will be stabilized.
I think what we should try to understand is that all those entities who can benefit from a prolonged present situation, they should be, I think, listed in the spoilers. Because, for example, BLA, you said, and other, such dissidents, they find sanctuaries more easily once Afghanistan is not stable and the government, they do not have a total writ on the entire area. So I would list them in the spoilers. I don't know why Muhammad Ali Saab has not named India and RAW,
He did.
which are the greatest
He
spoilers,
mentioned
because
RAW.
they take advantage. All right. Because they take advantage of this situation and attack against us. So all those entities who will take advantage of the present situation or instability in Afghanistan. So I would say that even the contractors which have been left by America, we said Daesh and ISIK, Tehreek-e-Taliban Pakistan, and the gun runners and narcotic barons. They are all spoilers. And if you allow me to say again, being less diplomatic, even the present government should be a spoiler in the way, because the present situation is so much good for them that they would like to perpetuate it for as long as possible. Otherwise, Ashraf Ghani will not be president. And on top of it, in my opinion, United States is a spoiler. Why? They won't like China to have their influence here. They won't like Russia to have their influence here. They don't like CPAC. They want to have an eye on with the assets of Iran and Pakistan. So let me say it openly, top of the list, Americans are the biggest
just to
spoilers.
clarify that point, help me understand that point. You're saying
Yes.
that America would want to sabotage its own withdrawal, that it could reverse anytime?
No, I'm not saying that.
Okay.
That withdrawal is not on their own sweet will. They would like to have their strong influence in Afghanistan to make sure those 5 things which I have counted. If anybody can tell me that no, it is not there. It is not in their interest that China should have influence in Afghanistan, because stable and peaceful Afghanistan, straight away Chinese will have more interest there. Russians will have more interest. Central Asian countries, Pakistan, CPAC will start getting prosper. They do not want that, my dear. So they are number 1 spoilers in my opinion.
Okay. Ambassador Saab, your take on the spoilers. But let me ask you another aspect, another very important thing as well. General Saab just mentioned the contractors. There is this scenario where responsible withdrawal, as you say, takes place, and then there is peace in Afghanistan, and then there is this perpetual dystopia, where there is a possibility that perhaps India is stationed, or perhaps there is a new kind of governing or a peace building exercise. One such example is the Eric Prince formula, where he wants to be the viceroy of Afghanistan and want to actually plant his own contractors there. Is there a possibility that such elements in the end might prevail, sir?
Well, I think this debate is getting very interesting. I think when you talk about spoilers, it is actually the war economy which is dictating the terms. So those who are involved in this whole game, if peace returns to Afghanistan, so war economy will have no place. So those who have been benefiting from that, their interests would be harmed. So definitely the others are. So you want to identify them? Yes. There are narco business people who are involved in that. Even Taliban are involved. The government, Ashraf Ghani is who is who. When I say, so they are law enforcement agencies, they are government officials, and where this narcotics is being grown, they are involved. And when you talk about other spoilers, now you talk about TTP, you talk about LET and others. Now I have a question, and that question is, that Taliban are in control of almost 50% of the territory, and they contest another 20% of the territory. So the question is, these spoilers, are they living in the Taliban-controlled territories or not? Because those Taliban-controlled territories are bordering Pakistan. Now, TTP, they are almost ideologically kissing cousins of the Taliban. So we don't have to lower our guard. We have to be very watchful. That's why I have to flag this alarm that we have to be very careful. And when we say they are fiercely independent people, so I think they know which side of their bread is buttered, and they can change their loyalties and they can change their policies. So we have to be very mindful. And then when you talk about India's involvement, they will. Because there is a vacuum next door to Pakistan and Afghanistan, and Indians would want to fulfill that vacuum, whether it is in the form of NDS, they support NDS, or whether it is BLA, BRA, or for that matter, it is CCP, because that is there. And then I don't think that ISK, now my big question is that ISK in fact took roots under the US watch. It was not because of the Taliban that ISK are in Afghanistan. It is because of the Americans and NATO that they are. And Russians have strong suspicions that Americans have in fact brought these ISK from Syria and Iraq to Afghanistan in unmarked helicopter. I'm not saying this. Russian spokesperson is on record having said that. So these are different, interest groups, different, games which have been played on the Afghan soil. The reason being that there is anarchy on the soil. And these talk of responsible withdrawal or irresponsible withdrawal actually is to save embarrassment to the departing troops. Otherwise, American presence was not a factor of stability, as I said it earlier. So their departure would not be a factor of destabilization because they, in the first place, never stabilized Afghanistan. So here this debate, I think, becomes meaningless. Yes, they have been spending money. They have been spending money in order to secure their own interests. They have not got rid. They have got rid of Al Qaeda, but they have, planted in the ISK. I can say it with responsibility. Reason being that they were the in charge.
Okay.
Under their watch, Afghanistan has become a narco state. They cannot say that anyone else was responsible.
Right.
Because they were presiding over everything.
That's a good point, Ambassador Saab. Allow me to come back to the studio. But while we can say, and Ambassador Saab quoted the Russian spokesman, that ISK were flown from Syria, we keep on hearing that Ajit Doval actually played a big part in ISK's interaction in Syria and then of course in Afghanistan. And amazingly, when Donald Trump actually paid attention to Afghanistan, the first daisy cutter they actually threw, mother of all bombs they threw, was at the Daesh or ISK. But at this moment, I keep on asking about a simple Occam's razor. And I keep on getting more variables. Do you honestly think that with so many moving parts, I mean, we can name all the neighbors and their interests. We can talk about internal, factions in Afghanistan. We can talk about international and global interest. Do you honestly think that peace in Afghanistan is even possible?
Profound question. Short answer,
no short answer.
Okay.
Look at history and then tell me, 200 years.
So I'll try to frame it in a simple manner, but comprehensive manner.
Okay.
I think the prospects, despite our very sincere and consistent and long-standing commitment towards peace process, the prospects are low for three reasons. Political, economic and security.
Okay.
Politically, and I'm here reiterating my earlier point, that no single political entity or stakeholder, unfortunately, has been able to command the respect, following and trust of all the communities and stakeholders within Afghanistan. Number one, irrespective whether it's Kabul administration or Afghan Taliban.
Never?
And for the last 40 years, let me put it this way. Number two, economically. And here, I think I agree with Ambassador Durrani that largely the economy, the current economy of Afghanistan is essentially war economy. There is no formal economy which can allow the, the Afghan refugees the hope and opportunity to return and resume a respectable, comfortable, meaningful life. So, what is absent and conspicuous by absence is the lack of international community, including the Western forces, economic commitment towards the people of Afghanistan. They have spent trillions of dollars on hard power, but they have not invested anything significant in the socio-economic development and giving hope and opportunity to the Afghan nation. That is the fundamental structural issue. And the third aspect is the security thing. Because of the departure of the Western forces and the accelerated conflict between Kabul administration and Afghan Taliban and the role of spoilers, I do not see any single overarching entity which can bring all of them to a consensus in a power sharing formula at a time when Afghan Taliban interpret Kabul administration as representing Western way of life and Western value system and Western political system, which they do not share.
Right. And you just told me that the West has not been able to invest. It has thrown in money, but only on hard power.
Absolutely.
And then all this rhetoric about nation building, what was that for past 20 years?
I think, frankly speaking, Afghanistan is an unfortunate victim of great power geostrategic competition, in which I see Afghanistan in future emerging as a possible battlefield for the geoeconomic contestation. because you have BRI, you have CPEC, and the spoilers and the proxies could be used in Afghanistan to disrupt the geo-economic connectivity of this region.
Right, Mohammad Ali Saab, I wanted to actually, continue with this line of questioning, but I am just told that we have to actually conclude the program today a little earlier. Sayyid Muhammad Ali, thank you very much for your time. Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi Saab, thank you very much for your precious time. Asif Dutani Saab, thank you very much for your time as well. Viewers, you have listened to our participants, especially one note that was very important was a note of caution that was repeatedly raised, mentioned here by Ambassador Asif Dutani. Remember that there is a history here, and there is a history of framing Pakistan as the culprit, right? So what does that mean? Pakistan should not be seen as some entity that is larger than life and is actually running the show. The second thing is, of course, no matter whatever Pakistan does, this thing can always go south. So it is important to keep on fortifying yourself, so that all these spoilers and that Pakistan elements like TTP, BLA, PLF, what have you, don't start attacking Pakistan. We have already seen attacks in Pakistan or on the border as well, as was pointed out in Sarina, Quetta, and also on our borders. We have to actually really watch out against these threats. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching. Take care.